Welcome back to the InnerOwl Wellness podcast, where we explore the inner realms within us to create higher dimensions of health and wellness in our lives. And my friends, today I am so excited to have with us a guest who is, to me, is like the bearer of wisdom. He's my good friend, and I say he's the bearer of wisdom because we were speaking before this podcast that every time I talk to him, I feel like there's like a truth radar that just comes out of him, out of his head, and he just reeks truth in everything he says. And so I'm so honored to have him with us on our podcast. Um, this man is a qigong teacher. He is a body worker. He's a kambo facilitator, which, if you guys don't know what that is frog medicine, which I'm sure we're going to get into. He is also a bee venom therapy facilitator. He's a rife machine practitioner. And finally, if as if those things weren't enough, he's also a health coach. And his name is Will McCandless. Thank you so much, Will, for joining us today.
Yeah, thank you for having me.
Awesome.
Excited
Yeah.
to be here.
Yeah, me too. And let's just get right straight into it. So the things that make me curious every time we talk is what you're interested in, and that is frequency medicine. And I know a little bit about it, but I feel like there's a whole lot that I have no idea about. So I want to ask you about that. And I want to start with a quote that you shared with me from Albert Einstein, and I want to ask you what that quote means. And so Einstein says, "The future of medicine is frequency." What did he mean by that?
Well, so yeah, he's basically talking about how everything in reality is vibrating at a certain level. Everything in physical matter and non-physical matter, every particle in existence is, energetic, and the foundation of all of everything is energy. And with that knowledge, we can understand that certain organisms are vibrating at a certain rate. And if you know how to match or find or isolate specific frequencies for specific illnesses, you can actually eradicate them out of the body. And not only that, you can also boost like the energy of different parts of your own body, like your organs, like so your liver or your kidneys or something like that. You could send a frequency in to increase the function of different parts of the body.
That's so fascinating, and I feel like that really contrasts with like the current like conventional medical paradigm that we live in. So what you're basically saying is that like by using frequency and electricity, like electromagnetic fields, if that's correct, we can actually change the attunement of certain frequencies of our body by matching them. Is that what you're saying?
Yeah, pretty much. So like the body, you could view the body as like an instrument, like a guitar, and every part of your body has different um, ways in which it should be vibrating. Even think of your heartbeat, like it should have like a specific, healthy rhythm to it. And all parts of the body are really like that, like the lungs even have a rhythm, and your lymphatic system. And yeah, we can get out of attunement and frequency devices using electromagnetic frequencies, but also like plasma. Plasma is like, they say the fourth state of matter, so it's not a solid, liquid, or a gas. It's basically all of them. And what we can see in nature, how we can view plasma as like lightning, or even like the sun. And there's ways in which, yeah, we can utilize these highly charged ways of energy, of expressing energy to attune the body. I mean, even think of just like being in the sun, like I'm sure like many people have the experience of like having a cut and then like being in the hot sun, and it just like feels amazing. Like you can feel the sun going in and like healing you basically. And yeah, there's ways in which you can create that type of environment through technology as well.
So, what kind of technologies do we currently have and do you use in your life that are able to do that and alter the frequency of our body to create healing and wellness?
Well, like within my internal system, I have learned the technology of qigong,
Mm,
which is a way to, harness energy from around you, from the environment, from the earth, and from, the universe, and integrate that into the system. And then some more external technology is, the rife technology that I've been using. Rife machines were actually invented in like the early 1930s by a man named Royal Raymond Rife. He did a lot of his work originally in San Diego, and before he did his work with frequencies, he invented the electron microscope and used that microscope in his work with frequencies to he was studying specific organisms, and then he had giant plasma tubes right next to these petri dishes that were under the microscope, and he would tune the frequencies until he would start to notice activity, and then he would refine them to where he could actually explode, maybe like a parasite or some bacteria in a petri dish. He would find whatever frequency would make these things literally explode, because they would just be overcharged with their own specific frequency. Like imagine like a balloon, like if you inflate a balloon
yeah,
too much, it's just going to pop.
right. That's so cool. And this guy was doing this in the 1930s, you say. This was like a really, really long time ago. And what's been happening since then with these frequency machines and this kind of technology? Are people still using it today? And like, what are they using it for?
Yeah, people are still using them today. They've been pretty underground for a while, since the 1930s. After all of this work, he actually refined his machines enough to where he was able to cure about 14 stage 4 cancer patients pretty quickly. And unfortunately, like right after that, he was shut down by the American Medical Association. His laboratory was burned to the ground, and he was taken to court and sued, and all this stuff, totally just erased from the mainstream. And in spite of all that, there's still been some like underground people who've been working with his devices and technology and developing and building, like off of what he created. And there's a lot of people using rife machines now. There's many different, brands you can even purchase from the internet. Not only rife machines, a lot of people are now getting into Healy. Like the
Mm,
Healy device is getting
yeah,
really popular.
yeah.
There's also like a woman named Hulda Clark. She did a lot of work with frequencies and parasites. She made a much like very simple device that can, you hold on to these copper little hand cylinders, and you can send some frequency into the body that way. Um, and but there's tons. There's new ones coming out all the time. There's a lot of like DIY people just experimenting, and there's many different ways to apply frequency for healing.
That's really fascinating. So, what are some of the conditions that it can be used for? And like you said, you're a Rife machine practitioner. So, like, what do you use it for exactly?
So I mean, you basically can use it for anything. I mean, as long as you know how to attune the frequency, which the device that I'm using, it has a database of about 60,000 different frequencies
Wow.
in the machine. So yeah, I mean, you really can use it for anything. The way in which you would start using this is you need to get your detox channels open and making sure that, you're getting rid of heavy metals and, a lot of chemical toxicity, making sure the organs are flushing, the lymphatic system is flushing. And that's basically like the first thing you would do when you would start using this machine. Um, and then beyond that, you really can do whatever you want. I've personally been using it to treat Lyme disease and
Mm.
parasites and, heavy metal toxicity. Everyone has heavy metal toxicity and a lot of different things going on. But, what's just great about this machine is like you can target really everything. And a lot of people have very low lying infections, like just like small amounts of all sorts of different organisms active in their body. And that can really be taxing to the system. And this is just great because you can go through and just eradicate any possible infection, any possible, toxin. And it even has ways in which you can apply the pads. Like there's some like muscle stimulation, similar like pads where you put them on the body, and there's two of them, and it will send a range of frequencies in between the two pads, and it will listen to any disturbances, and then it will record whatever it finds, so then it can know what's going on in your body as well.
That's so crazy. So it's basically acting like a doctor in a sense of like detecting like a sort of illness in between.
Yeah, and actually probably better than a doctor, because a doctor really, like, just from looking at you, if they're a Western doctor, like there's not much that they can see. Um, if they're a Chinese medicine practitioner, they know how to listen to the body, to the very subtle cues, like maybe looking at your tongue or looking at your eyes or just your presence, but they're still kind of, just getting an external, maybe somewhat internal view. But the rife can be extremely specific, or other technologies, can be extremely specific and have immediate results. Like if you have a urine test, like they may only be able to find like a few things in that, and it's going to take some time, or like a stool test or even a blood test, like these things can take time, but using frequency, it's immediate results.
Wow. It's kind of wild to me that people don't really know about this stuff, including me. Like I'm not sitting here pretending like I use this, and this is why I want to speak to you about this because I'm particularly curious for me and just to educate the people who are watching this, or listening to this. But I want to understand a little bit more about how it works. So, is it that the machine, you said you have about 60,000 frequencies? Is that right? Is it that each frequency codes for a certain illness, and so then you just tune your machine to that frequency, and then you basically connect it to your body, and then by matching that frequency of the illness in your body, then it is then able to change that? Is that right? And can you tell me just a bit about like what exactly is being sent through? I'm guessing there's some wires involved or something, or what's involved in the process of getting from the machine to your body?
Yeah, so there's many different ways you can apply the frequency to the body. Like I said, there's those muscle stimulation pads. They're called like TENS pads. You can apply those to the body and then directly send frequency in that way. It also has some cylinders that you plug wires into, these like metal cylinders, and you hold them with your hands, and it'll send frequency that way. There's also, I have a plasma tube. So it's a large glass tube, and it has two electrodes in it. And the tube is filled with noble gas called argon gas. And then when the frequency gets sent into the tube, it'll start glowing. Like you can see those like neon signs in 7-Eleven or stores. That's plasma. That's there's gases inside that tube, but then that's running at whatever frequency those are set to. But this one can, there's 60,000 things it could be tuned to, and then you can even program the frequencies yourself. And then additionally, beyond that too, there are what are called remotes. It has remotes, so it has basically this little clamp that works like this. And there's two like electromagnetic coils on the top and the bottom. And then in between them, they open up, and then you can sandwich inside a piece of your fingernail or even like a sample of your own blood. And then you can actually receive the frequency remotely. So you don't even need to be like right next to the machine. And this is starting to work in the quantum field. The device I'm using is actually called a Spooky 2, because there's actually a quote from Albert Einstein where he was researching quantum entanglement, and his quote was that he called it spooky action at a distance, because they noticed that they could affect matter at any distance they wanted if two particles were attuned if they were in sync, they could affect one and one could be like on the other side of the planet. No connection at all, but
Yeah.
these things could be simultaneously altered.
That is super cool, and I have heard that of that quote before. It's one of my favorite quotes by him. Uh, I didn't know that we're gonna be talking a lot about Albert Einstein, but he's such a such a genius. And of course, it seems like his genius even reaches into the field of medicine. Just on that quantum entanglement, I find that to be so fascinating. How like you can have an electron here and an electron on Venus, and if you know that one of them, so electrons have this thing called spin, so that if one of them is spinning upwards, you instantaneously know that the other one that it's connected to is spinning downwards. They're quantumly entangled, and that's what scientists call it. Again, I don't pretend to be a physicist or astrophysicist or quantum physicist by any means, but just something that I've gone down some rabbit holes with that stuff, so it's really interesting. But back to the Rife machine for a second. So remote healing, that is super fascinating. But I'm curious about like what are some of the examples of the frequencies that you said that you can tune into? Like what are some of the options on the machine that you can kind of change it to? Are they numbers or are they more like labels of things like illnesses or ways of being or colors or I don't know, like what kind of frequencies are they?
Yeah, so I mean, like in the database, it has like the name for whatever it is, but then like you will click on it and then you'll see this specific frequency for what that is. So like there's something called like a molecular weight. So like how dense like a molecule is um, can relate to the specific frequency that it's vibrating at. So the machine has in the database like all of the recorded frequencies for like any organism you could think of, you know, like a tapeworm or any parasite, any bacteria, you know, like strep or staph or anything. And then, yeah, you can target those things. And then additionally, it has like all the frequencies for, you know, the heavy metals, like I mentioned, like lead, it has the frequency for
Mm,
lead. So you could put in the frequency for lead and then apply frequency in a way that'll dislodge it from your tissue and then send it back into your bloodstream. And you would need to be drinking a lot of water and
mm,
taking, you know, things like clays or activated charcoal to help
mm.
pull these things out.
Yeah.
But yeah, it's very specific with how it can attune to these things. And then it also has, you know, healing frequencies like a lot of people are familiar with, like 432 hertz or like 528 hertz. 528 is really good at like repairing the DNA. And, yeah, so and then those are just very brief examples, but it has about 60,000 things like that. Um, and then also too, the way in which you apply the frequency is very different, you know, because there's different types of waveforms. There's like, the sine wave, which it looks, you know, kind of like an ocean wave, like it goes up and down, kind of like this. And those are more for like healing, you know, tuning the body back into like a healthy vibration. And then there's like the killing frequencies, which are more like kind of like a square shape. So they come and like drop and then go and then boom, boom. And they're kind of abrasive, but then you would apply those only to like the organisms in which you want to kill because like it's very off from like the sine wave, which is like the natural rhythm of you know, most things.
Yeah. So it can be kind of a tricky scenario where like you need to know the exact frequency you're resonating at to match that with the sine wave or the square wave because you don't want to kill like your good cells and you want to kill the bad cells or the pathogens that are coming at you.
Right. Yeah. It needs to be very specific. But this machine does a pretty good job of like, it has a pretty solid database and a pretty good way to learn, you know, how to like send the correct frequencies. But yeah, there definitely can be like harmful frequencies. But we're actually, a lot of us are exposed to very harmful frequencies all the time through like Wi-Fi, Bluetooth, you know, different forms of harmful electromagnetic radiation, can really cause a lot of havoc to the system. And, you know, a lot of us are still even just like learning about that and what that means. And, um, yeah.
We are definitely, I feel like, still in our infancy with this stuff. And I'm so glad that you're here to talk about this because honestly, you're just blowing my mind. Like, most of the world has no idea that we can actually heal using frequency. And like, you know, where we live in a society where it's like you take a pill for every ill. Like you go to the doctor, it gives you some pill that's supposed to alter your neurochemistry or something in your blood, or and it's supposed to fix the symptom that you're dealing with as opposed to the root cause. And I feel like frequency is even a step behind that, where it's like you can change anything if you change your frequency. And it makes me also kind of wonder if like, when people say, especially in like the spiritual community, people are like, "Oh, like I just want to elevate my frequency, high vibes, bro." Like, that kind of thing. I wonder if like metaphorically, like that's like what they're actually talking about in that way. And I'm not sure is that kind of in some weird like pseudo spiritual way like what it is they're talking about.
I mean, absolutely. Like everything is frequency, and like all of us on some level, like know that. Like when you hear a really good song, and it makes that like tingle, like shoot up your spine, like that's a frequency. That's electricity running in your
Yeah,
body.
yeah,
And just like the feeling of joy, like you can feel that in your body, and that's literally like a charge. Like that's an electrical signal.
yeah,
And yeah, I mean, some of these things are still like in their infancy for like the masses right now, but we've
yeah.
actually been using frequency forever. Like you can look back at like the pyramids that are all over the world. Like pyramids are holding a certain frequency placed on specific points around the earth to amplify also specific frequencies. And there are a lot of ancient cultures that used energy to heal. A lot of ancient cultures use even like copper. They loved copper, because copper can, it's conductive. It can hold a specific charge to it.
I guess we're not in our infancy then. People have been using this for thousands of years. But of course, like silly old modern mankind, we just forget that information, or we toss it in the back as if it's not important in favor of these more like westernized, invasive approaches that we just don't need to take and often have side effects. So it's just like you're saying, like we got to remember this information, and bring it back because we really really need it. Like we're exposed to all sorts of different things that are so bad for us, like you said, Wi-Fi, Bluetooth, heavy metals, toxins, like excessive bacterial load, mold, like Lyme disease, and a whole host of symptoms, cancer, that I feel like we can tap into with frequency based on what you're saying. But I'm curious about your experience. So since you've been using these machines and using frequency to heal, like what have you been seen? Like what have been the benefits that you've seen through using them?
Well, I mean, I've seen all sorts of stuff, and originally when I first got the machine, like like I said, you have to do detox, and
Yeah.
even when I got it, I was kind of skeptical. I was like, really remote? Like I just put my fingernail in there. Like, okay, like I didn't think it was going to be like that crazy. And then the first day I got it, I was just following the instructions. I put my fingernail in there because it's also like that's like the softest way to apply the frequencies to the body. And just within like 2 hours, it was the first thing it starts with is a heavy metal detox. And just within a few hours, I had to like call home to someone I was living with and be like, can you please like turn off my computer? Like it's too strong. Um,
What?
yeah, it was wild. Like I started to get all like headachy and like spacey, feeling like I was kind of hungover, just
Yeah.
like I could taste like my breath, just releasing a ton, which
Yeah.
also a lot of people don't know, like 70% of our detox is with our exhale. Is something I've heard.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah, but what's really interesting also with the heavy metals is that because we've been exposed to so many and that metals are conductive, the more heavy metals you have in your body, the more you're going to be affected by like Wi-Fi or like 5G or things like that. So there's some people who have a really hard time being in like a city or being around Wi-Fi or phones for too much. And that might be because their body's also having a hard time getting rid of, aluminum or lead or mercury or, any of these things.
Wow, that is so fascinating. I guess what you're saying is like the heavy metals are attracting these signals, the Wi-Fi signals, so it just kind of like holds it in, and then you get all sorts of symptoms in the body because we're receiving those, as opposed to people who are like detox of heavy metals, and so they don't have that conducting energy in their body to receive those frequencies, and then they can go about their day, but maybe they still get some toxic load, but not as much as the folks who have like are just filled with this stuff.
Yeah. And then also too, like specific metals can only hold a specific frequency. So, lead is a very low, dense frequency, but then there's a lot of people who heal themselves using colloidal silver or like monoatomic gold or even like forms of copper because these things hold a very high frequency in the body. They can maintain a very high charge in the cells.
Yeah. Have you heard of homeopathy?
Yeah. I don't have a lot of experience with homeopathy, but I kind of get the basics of it.
So yeah, it's something that we learn about in naturopathic medical school, and what's so crazy to me is it sounds eerily similar to frequency medicine that you're talking about. In the sense of like, just briefly for those who don't know it, basically homeopathy is like you get like an herb, or like you get a rock, or something from a frog, anything, it can be literally anything, and you dilute it like, so you get like the molecules of it and you dilute it so many times that the original herb, rock, metal, animal thing, whatever you used, is so diluted that it's not even there anymore. You can't even detect it. But because they call it succuss it, which is like you shake it in a certain way and you add water to it, the frequency of that thing is now stored in the water that it's been submerged in. And so as a result of that, like let's say you have malaria, right? Like you have symptoms of malaria, let's say they're vomiting, itching, let's just say that. You get a plant that mimics the symptoms of malaria when taken in crude large doses, but when you get that plant and you dilute it so strongly that it's not even there anymore and you give it to someone who has malaria, because it resonates with the frequency of malaria that that person is suffering from, the body just almost says like, ah, I got it, I know what to do now. And that matching allows the body to increase its vis, its energy, to be able to kind of transmute that disease and bring back wellness and health. And again, it sounds so freaking accurate to what you're saying of like, we just got to match the frequency, and once you match that frequency, only then can you heal. It's almost kind of like the illness in your body is saying like, I just want someone to understand me, I want something to understand who I am, what I am, and then the frequency does that, and then when it does that, that's when you heal. I don't know if that's accurate, but I want to hear it from you. Does that sound pretty accurate in terms of like the illness just needing something to match it? And what is it about like matching it that allows healing to occur?
Yeah, I mean that definitely sounds pretty accurate. And like the way, I mean, there's slight differences between like homeopathy and rife. Like the technology I have, it has ways in which it can apply some sort of like subtle treatments, which that's more like homeopathy, like tuning, like very subtly, kind of like giving the body some information about how it can overcome like a specific illness. But then like the traditional rife frequencies are actually like exploding organisms. So it's just like stepping in for your own immune system. They use the analogy of like an opera singer holding a wine glass. If they can hit the right note at the right volume, you can shatter a wine glass. So that's more of like the killing modalities. But then, yeah, what you're talking about is like basically giving the body information about how it can do a better job on its own, which is really important. I mean, that's the best thing that we can do is just have our system be the best it can be. And really our own technology, the human body, is one of the most advanced pieces of technology that exists in the universe. And we are an electromagnetic generator. Like the human heart has a measurable field proven by science that on average extends about 6 feet beyond the physical body. Um, and then how, again, I'll go back to like the Wi-Fi and 5G stuff. This stuff is really affecting that electromagnetic field. And a lot of ancient cultures and like shamanic cultures, they would say that, like if your field, like if your aura or your electromagnetic like light body is intact and fully sealed, then like you can't get sick. And then illnesses come in with first, they come into the energy body. That's what Chinese medicine says, is all illness first begins as an energetic illness. And then if left untreated, it will become a physical illness. And, yeah, a lot of these things that, like all this harmful EMF is really affecting us. Now, there's a doctor called Dr. Klinghardt, and he's done a lot of research showing that, a Wi-Fi signal can actually grow certain organisms 600 times faster than they would in an EMF proof environment. So like they've put petri dishes of like black mold next to a Wi-Fi router, and they'll grow 600 times faster than if they're not exposed to any EMF at all.
Wow, that's both like terrifyingly concerning and also like a reason for hope because we're finally beginning to understand this stuff.
Yeah.
Um,
Yeah. And that's why a lot of people say this is why we're seeing such high numbers in specific, illnesses right now, just because the body is being bombarded by all sorts of just, they call them like discordant energies, which are like just out of sync. I don't know if you know about like Dr. Emoto. He's done a lot of work about, like frequency and intention with like water, where like he,
mm,
would speak words over water and then freeze it and then study the, basically like, the molecules underneath, like a microscope, like the snowflakes that come from water, and they're all unique. But then when water gets charged with a specific frequency, even, our voice, like, and the intention behind specific words, when they hit water, they affect the whole shape and structure. And our bodies, are at least like 70% water. So it's very important. Yeah. Our local environment, what we're surrounded with, and our internal environment, like how we're just feeling the energy, like dis-ease, like not feeling at ease in your own body will create sickness.
yeah. And that sickness can take a variety of forms, right? Like it can be like mold, illness, or it can be cancer, it can be infection, a whole host of things. I want to talk about one of those things that I know you've suffered from in the past and have found a lot of respite using these technologies that you use today, and that's Lyme disease. And I know a lot of people have really suffered from Lyme disease. I know for us in the clinic, I know some doctors that come up to me and say some things like, "Oh, it's a Lyme patient." Like it's pretty complicated, meaning like they don't really have answers to really help this person heal on the long term. Or they do, it just takes a long time and it's again, they say it's complicated. But I know that you have found so many answers and have discovered so many things about yourself throughout this process of encountering Lyme disease. Can you tell us about like your journey with that and like how it's changed you and what you've realized as a result of it?
Yeah, I mean, so originally it was about 2021. I was in Northern California, and, I was spending a lot of time out in the forest. It was during COVID, so I was just trying to be, like outside in nature. I was working on some farms, actually working on a cannabis farm, and, yeah, I was bit by a tick. And I'd been bitten by ticks before in my life, and, never really had problems. I pulled it out like pretty quickly. And like I'd always like heard of Lyme disease too. I even like had known like a couple of people who had it, but I didn't really like know what it was. And like most people still like don't, even doctors, like they don't really even know what it is. Because it is very complex and complicated, and there's a big lack of just knowledge around it. Which also for me, like after I was bit, I had no symptoms, and like it wasn't my first choice at the time with all the things going on to go and, sit in a doctor's office. And yeah, I felt fine for, at least like 6 months. I had nothing. And then I started to have a little gum like irritation. And then I started to use like some herbs and like hydrogen peroxide, and that kind of went away. And then I didn't really have any like big issues for like 2 years. And at that point, I just like totally forgotten like about the tick, and I was just living my life. And but then I started to have a lot of like chronic fatigue and feeling really just like slow, and I was having a lot of like mucus production, weird feelings in my stomach, and just off. Just something was just like not right. And I was actually I was in Spain at the time. I was living over there and I actually saw a doctor, and I was just like telling her what was going on. And she'd asked me, she's like, "Oh, where are you from?" And I was like, "California." And she was like, "Oh," she was like, "Well, it's some of your symptoms sound kind of like Lyme, but she was like, but don't worry, like they don't have that in California. So that's not your problem." And then she had told me that I was dealing with like mold illness and like candida overgrowth, which was true, you know, but that's also because like I did have a Lyme thing going on. But anyways, I mean, just from that, I started to just go after the mold and the candida, and like started eating a keto diet and doing fasting and doing a lot of different herbal protocols, and a lot of sauna and things like that, which was all really good. And there's a lot of overlap with Lyme. Um, but then I would like get better and then kind of feel not as good and then get better, and kind of just very up and down for a while. And then I actually moved back to California after being in Spain for almost like 2 years, and then moved down to San Diego, which is where I met you. And I moved down there to go to massage school, Chinese medicine school, and I moved about 3 blocks away from a Lyme specialist, and I was looking for a new naturopath at the time. And yeah, I just went and saw her and kind of told her what I was dealing with, and immediately she was like, "Yeah, that sounds exactly like Lyme," because it's also really common for people, to get misdiagnosed for years. Like the average Lyme patient takes 5 years of seeing doctors for them to find someone who even really accurately knows what Lyme is and how to test for it. It takes about 5 years for that to happen and get a diagnosis. And then, many people at that point, like they get put on antibiotics, which if you've had it for anywhere longer than 6 months, like antibiotics are not going to treat it. Unfortunately, at least long term, you might have some initial benefit, and maybe if you're lucky, some people might get over it that way. But for most people, like once it's been kind of established in your system for a while, antibiotics just kind of won't cut it. And there's a lot of different things you can do for it. But then, yeah, like everyone is so unique, and how it's affecting them is so unique. Um, and, my journey has been a lot too of just like talking to doctors and basically just getting zero information, like them just being completely untrustworthy, unhelpful. So I've just really had to step in and educate myself, which is why I've gone, so much into the frequencies. And all the other things I do, like qigong and even kambo, like the frog medicine, and bee venom, because like I've just, I would go to doctors and try what they recommend. They don't do anything. So then I'm like, well, what else can I do? And then I start just looking and seeking online and talking to people. And there's a lot out there that is possible, like many, many ways that we can heal the body that are, definitely within our grasp.
Yeah, thank you so much for sharing, part of your journey. I have been through chronic diseases myself, mold, musculoskeletal things that sometimes I still grapple with, but way better than I used to be. And so I really resonate, I really empathize with kind of your journey. And I'm also so happy for you that you've been finding more things that you can do where other routes maybe weren't so helpful in, going to doctors and stuff. And I want to get into that. I want to ask you what you found to be helpful. So after seeing doctors and finding out that they didn't help you and getting into frequency, what have you found to be the most helpful in treating yourself from this?
Yeah, I mean, well, so it is very complex, and there are many layers to it. Like, um, with Lyme, it comes normally with, they call it like Lyme and co-infections, because Lyme is like a specific bacteria, but then like it'll weaken the body to where the body then becomes very susceptible to all sorts of stuff. So it's very hard to detox from heavy metals for people dealing with Lyme. It's, you can be very susceptible to mold illness, very susceptible to parasites, really all sorts of stuff can be affecting the body. And that's, I think, also why a lot of Lyme patients don't really get a lot of, results dealing with doctors, because a lot of doctors are trained they kind of go after one thing, they're kind of like, oh, this is your problem. Here's the pill. It'll fix it. And there's never one thing going on wrong in the body. Like, illness in all forms is normally very complex. It has to do with your food and your sleep and your stress and how you're moving your body and how you're detoxifying, and so many things. And yeah, I mean, it's been a really big journey to just learn kind of like all these different ways in which the body operates and how to support like all parts of the system. Even socially, social interaction is huge. Like, I've learned that being like chronically lonely can be worse on your immune system than smoking a pack of cigarettes every day. And
Holy
that's,
crap.
yeah, pretty significant. And these things, just like, in like a standard doctor visit, when you're talking to them for maybe 20 minutes, you can't even, there's no way you're going to get into a quarter of those things. And, yeah, I think it's really important for all of us now to like really step in and learn how to be our own doctor, how to listen to our intuition. Even Hippocrates, like the founder of modern medicine, like, he has a quote that says, "The man who is not his own doctor is a fool." Because we can't trust other people to know what's going on in our own body. Like,
No.
we are the only ones who experience our own body.
Yeah.
And, I've experienced a lot through the Lyme. Like, it's been years of big ups and downs. Like, there's, I could write a book on all the things I've experienced from that. Some of it has been very intense.
Yeah.
Which also is really strange for Lyme patients too, because like, outwardly people they don't always like look like they're going through something major. They might just look kind of like tired or something, but like,
Yeah.
what could be happening internally is just like hell, basically.
Holy shit.
Yeah. Even just how Lyme and these organisms can affect the mind, like certain organisms, their consciousness, even mold, like, it's a very ancient fungus. You can think about what magic mushrooms do, what psilocybin mushrooms do to your mind. Like this is another type of fungus, but mold can be very aggressive in how it can create negative thoughts, suicidal thoughts, even very aggressive thoughts, and all of these organisms too. And they know, like, they're very bizarre with their intelligence too. They know that if they can get you to feel stress or angry or these things, that will also lower your immune response. So yeah, these things, like dealing with any sort of like chronic illness, can be, yeah, definitely complex, but it is upon, like, I feel like all of us individually to like learn, and also learn before we get sick, to learn how to take care of our bodies, because it's like a vehicle for our life. And, your car, you want to do regular maintenance on, making sure that everything is functioning properly, especially if you're driving over some bumpy terrain, which, we've been going through some bumpy stuff, the past few years.
We've just been raw dogging it or bumpy roading it for so long, man. We need answers. So yeah, man, it is really, really wild. And again, chronic disease can teach you so much about yourself and your body and like spirit and stuff. But so what have you found helpful to help treat mold? What are some of the things that you do? Or not mold, I meant to
Yeah,
say
just, well,
Lyme disease.
all of it.
Yeah.
Some of the best things I've done: fasting is phenomenal. Fasting is just like a cure all for any ailment, any condition. is great. And yeah, like it's a big reason why it's in every ancient culture too. Like every culture has done fasting forever, because it just works. Fasting has been great. I mean, definitely being on a clean diet too. When I'm not fasting, like eating as clean as possible.
What
Certain
does that
supplement.
involve? What kind of diet do you eat?
I was doing the keto diet for a long time, so like no carb and no sugar, and everything else like organic and sustainable as much as possible. When I was doing keto, I was eating a lot of just like steamed veggies and like steamed mushrooms, and then different like organic meats, and like fish, eggs, stuff like that. And now I've started to switch a little more like paleo, so I'm eating a little bit more fruit and like a little more like starchy vegetables, sometimes grains, but I try to avoid grains still too. But yeah, I mean, like absolutely nothing processed. Ideally, nothing in a package. If it has a long list of ingredients, like it's probably not something I want to put in my body. Really, just food. Like organic, actual like food, things that come from the earth and not from a laboratory.
Yeah. So no Oreos then.
No, no Oreos. Yeah, I don't want those, especially not with the sigils that are all over the front of them.
Yeah. Wait, what sigils? What are you talking about?
Oh, that's something yeah, there's a whole bizarre rabbit hole you can go into on the cover of an Oreo. It has all this like pretty dark magic symbolism all over it. Like the symbology on there is a lot of it has to do with the element of sulfur. There's like the alchemical um, symbols for sulfur are written on the cover of an Oreo. And there's even like people say the sigil of sulfur is like on an Oreo.
Whoa. And okay, that's weird. And the sigil of sulfur is supposed to indicate like something evil, or that's what I'm hearing from you.
Yeah, so sulfur is very much related with the planet of Saturn. And then, there's certain people who practice certain forms of alchemy and they worship the planet Saturn and the beings, also correspond with the planet Saturn,
Mm.
Satan. There's a lot of Satan worshippers who worship the planet and then also, work with different alchemical means to create destruction. One of those being food. I was literally in Safeway the other day and I was walking down an aisle and I saw a cake mix box that like straight on the cover just said devil's food.
What?
Like, whether you believe in this stuff or not,
I
like
don't know. Yeah.
it's there. It's written all over the box. It was
Holy
like some
shit.
Betty Crocker like cake mix, and it literally just said
Oh.
devil's food.
They're not even trying to hide it anymore. They're just
Oh,
like,
it's just there. There you go.
honestly, I kind of give them credit. They've been hiding for so long now. They're just like, fuck it, devil's food. Like, this is who we are.
I mean, yeah.
Take it
I
or
mean,
leave it.
yeah. People are so just desensitized to this reality that that can be right in front of someone, and they don't even. It doesn't mean anything to them. They're just like, yeah, okay, it's cake. Like I'll just shove that in my mouth.
Yeah.
Like,
And then deal with the consequences after,
yeah.
which whatever that may be,
Yeah. And I mean, it's hard for a lot of people too, because
Yeah.
like, a lot of places,
Yeah.
especially out in the US, like they're called like food deserts where like all they can get is like gas station food or like,
Yeah.
just machined and, frankenfood stuff made in a laboratory. That's all that some people can get. And they don't even know. They don't know any better. Like
They don't.
that's just
No,
what
no,
they
no.
have.
Yeah, that's one of the problems. Yeah, accessibility, definitely. People don't have access to good food all the time. Another part is like just the sheer neurochemical effects that these things have on the brain. Like refined sugar literally taps into the same receptors in your brain as cocaine in terms of how it makes you addicted to it. And if your community, that's another aspect, is community. If all your friends are eating this stuff all the time and don't give a fuck about their health, and go out getting drunk every other day and like doing all this stuff that's like clearly bringing down your energy, then if you sit outside of that, then you run the risk of being lonely and isolated and separate from everyone else, which seems to be the right thing to do. It's just again, it's like you said, it's hard for people. There are barriers to healing. Otherwise, we would all be doing it and it would be easy. And it is easy. It's simple in many ways. But, I have a lot of compassion for people who aren't able to make those decisions yet. And I have faith that they can make those decisions. It's just that, there's these impediments that make it a tad bit more challenging for them.
Yeah, for sure. I mean, our society is set up to make us sick. Like,
Yeah.
and now that I've changed so much in my life to be healthy, like, and I was pretty healthy growing up as well. Like, I still was eating an American diet. I was still eating like hot lunch from my school, which like was just poison, basically, just
Yeah.
food filled with poison, and eating, like frosted flakes and like pancakes, like with bleached flour and maple syrup and like Sprite. Like, when I used to get sick, my parents didn't know much better, and they would say like, well, they knew it's good to be hydrated when you're sick, but then they would buy me like root beer and like Sprite when I would get sick. And like,
Mm.
a lot of people, they have stomach problems and they drink like ginger ale. They drink like a Canada Dry ginger ale to help their stomach out, which is just filled with processed sugar and, fluoridated, chlorinated water, aluminum from the can, BPA, like the list is huge.
Right.
And people just don't know. They just, and it
Yeah.
was really like not that long ago where all food was just organic. And the whole term, even organic, is just, it's a made up term to just mean real food. And like a lot of this fake food is not even that old. It's like brand new. It's just like
Right.
some stuff people cooked up like within the past 50 to 100 years.
Yeah. And the strange part is all like these government officials who are like dealing with these like the chronic disease epidemic. They're like, we don't know what's going on. There's these diseases are all on the rise, and they're like baffled that their numbers are going up. And I'm just like, well, obviously there's these associations of these things that we started to do, plastic bottles, aluminum cans, preservatives, food coloring, refined sugar, that we're also increasing at the same time. And there's a clear association between those. The research is showing that. And yet they're still baffled, like, oh, like, I wonder why these things are happening?
Yeah, I mean, it's all like this stuff is very simple and very basic, and it's all a business. Like a lot of the main food companies that are producing all this Franken food, they're the same companies who are making cancer treatments and making medications for people that they would need to take every day. I mean, this stuff is really ancient too, even being involved with governments. Like I've heard even back in the day, the Roman government, when people were getting like unruly, when the government was starting to lose control, they started dumping lead in their aqueducts. They started putting lead in their own water to kind of, dull the people down a little bit, lower their vibes. So
Wow.
they're not so charged to, to make some change and to, so this stuff it's old. It's
Yeah, yeah.
ancient.
Yeah, the good stuff is ancient and the bad stuff is ancient. Yeah, we get both. We get the gifts and the poisons of the past.
Yeah.
Whichever way you want to see it, however you want to look at it. Um,
Yeah.
but I want to get back to like Lyme disease for a second because I feel like there's a lot of people that are suffering from this. And you started to mention the things that helped you. You mentioned fasting and diet, and then we got into that. Besides those two things, what else have you found to be the most helpful?
Yeah, beyond fasting diet, sauna is really good.
Sauna, detox, just like helping detox.
Detox. Yeah. Certain
Yeah.
IVs, like I love getting glutathione.
Mhm.
Methylene blue has helped me a lot.
Yeah.
Love that stuff. Ozone has been great in different forms, being treated with ozone.
How do you use ozone? Because I know there's different. You can even get an IV of ozone if I'm serving, and you can even breathe it in. So how are you getting it into your system?
Well, if you're breathing it in, it has to be bubbled through olive oil or a certain type of oil,
Mhm.
because breathing straight ozone can be damaging to tissue,
Right. Yeah. Yeah.
just to the lung tissue.
Yeah.
But you can apply ozone gas directly, like to the colon, like rectally, or to the blood. Like there's treatments where there's something called a 10 pass, which I've been getting a lot of, where they will draw out your blood into a little like tube or like a little bulb, like a glass bulb, and then bubble ozone gas into that. And the ozone is if you think of oxygen, oxygen is O2. So
Hmm.
there's two little O molecules. Ozone is like O3, O4, could be even stronger. But so it's a highly oxidizing gas, and that oxidation will go and kill off any anaerobic organism or any organism that cannot exist in high oxygen, which is a really high frequency as well. So anything that can't exist in a really high oxygenated environment will die. And then that blood gets put back into your body, and the body will also regenerate a lot of its tissues and reduce a lot of inflammation from the ozone. That stuff is great. It's also been super repressed. The FDA says there's no benefit, and it's been used over 150 years. Was first used in Germany by doctors over there to do, to kill off like any kinds of infection. So love ozone. And then, yeah, that frog medicine kambo,
Mm.
incredible stuff. Lyme is a bacteria that actually is very similar to malaria. And kambo has been used for thousands of years by certain indigenous tribes to cure malaria and to cure like dengue fever, staph infection, anything that can come from living in a tropical, environment like the Amazon.
Okay, so you brought up combo, and I'm so glad that you did because I've been so curious about combo, like you have no idea, and I haven't tried it yet. It's been kind of in the back of my mind. And for those who don't know what combo is, and I'll let you talk about it, but I'll briefly introduce it. It's basically this frog medicine. It's the venom of this frog that you isolate, and then you take like a minuscule amount and you poke it onto your skin, and then you get this deep purging from like the depths of like your soul, literally, of puking or crying, or it can take a variety of faces. And that's like the most intense part. It's a very short thing. It's like 20, 30 minutes, maybe even. And then after that, you feel so relieved and so spiritually relaxed and way, way better. But that's just my understanding. And I've never done it before. But you're a combo facilitator. And so I would love to hear from you. And I'm sure a lot of people listening to this would love to hear from you. Um, yeah, what is combo? What's this frog? Where's this frog from? And what are we extracting from it, and what does it do in the body once we use it?
Yeah, so kambo is a frog that is native to the Amazon. The Latin name is the Phymedusa bicolor frog, and yeah, it has a secretion on its back that kills just about anything. So that this frog, it has no predators. Nothing will want to touch it. So the secretion on its back is a venom to a lot of organisms and maybe even to other, animals. But um, everything in dose is everything with dosage is very important. So, something that's a poison in a small amount can be a medicine. Um, a little bit of a bad thing can be a good thing. Too much of a good thing can be a bad thing. So yeah, there's a beautiful story that goes with the kambo frog in that there was this one tribe that was in the Amazon, and all of these people in this tribe were getting really sick. And it was something that was like new, and like no one had seen it before. And like there were children dying and elders dying, and like all sorts of people getting really affected by this strange illness. And the elders of this tribe kind of like gathered, and they were thinking of what to do and how to, resolve and heal their people so they could be saved from this mysterious uh, ailment. And there was one elder, his name was Kampu, and he decided to go on like a vision quest, and he, ventured out into the Amazon by himself. Started doing some dieta, like reducing a lot of his food, and began to drink ayahuasca and like pray and just listen to his ancestors and the rainforest for guidance. And he was guided to meet this frog. The frog spirit, came and introduced himself to Kampu, and uh, taught him how to use it. Taught him how to use the medicine on its back to heal himself and all the people in his community. And he learned that, yeah, the way in which you apply it, you would get a small stick and you light it on fire and then you blow it out so you have just the ember. And then you take that ember and you very briefly touch it to the skin, making a small, very small burn. And then you normally do like a sequence of dots, depending on what dose you want. And then you would wipe off the top layer of skin and you would take the secretion off of this frog's back and then wipe it into these gates. They're called gates where you've burned yourself, and then get it wet. And then the medicine from the kambo frog will go into the lymphatic system and it will start scavenging all of the body, opening up any points of blockages. It will go into your blood. It goes everywhere. And it starts just annihilating biofilms and organisms and flushing things into the stomach, flushing things out of the liver and the kidneys. And it just dumps all this bile into the stomach. And then, yeah, normally people have a pretty aggressive, like purge, like vomiting. People, you normally vomit a lot. But before going into this, you have to drink a lot of water and your stomach completely empty. So you're just purging the water and whatever else is coming out. And yeah, the effects come on very quickly. And the purge normally only lasts, about like 20 minutes or so. And then afterwards, you would wipe off the dots of kambo medicine, and then cover those gates with, there's a tree sap that's called dragon's blood, but it's just a sap from a tree. And it comes in and can make like a natural Band-Aid. So it covers up the little wounds.
Mm-hmm.
And people have had huge breakthroughs with this medicine for a long, long time. It's a natural cure for malaria. And like I said, dengue, all sorts of these infections. But then also the tribes say that it treats like panema, which they call like negative energy.
Mm-hmm.
And it just purges that out of your body. So it's also very energetic as well. So like people can have a lot of emotional release, a lot of memories come up to the surface to be released. Even entities, like entity attachments, can be released from people. And it's very deeply releasing. And then also I could share too, on a more scientific level, there's been people who've analyzed this medicine, and there's been about 25 isolated peptides found in the kambo medicine that do all sorts of stuff. There's even been pharmaceuticals derived from the medicine.
Really, really interesting. I'm so glad that you brought up the science part too, because people like to hear both sides, like the spiritual, energetic side, and then the scientific side, depending on the language that they're versed in. That is so crazy. That I mean, everything you just said is so crazy to me. But let's just start off with the fact that like how it was discovered. I'm always blown away by how these medicines are discovered. Like some guy must have just found this frog, and like you're saying, he just got some messages from somewhere that he's meant to use this frog and at the right dose. And like it just blows my mind how the information comes to us, right? Of just when you trust your intuition, and he was on plant medicine, he was just really tapped into something, and he got that. That's the first part that blew my mind. The other part that blew my mind is that it's a frog, right? Like people don't really have experience with frog medicine in our society. And it's the secretions from the back of a frog, you were saying, that basically has no predators. So this frog is essentially, it's not immortal because it dies on its own accord at the end of the day. But excuse my French, but nothing can fuck with this frog. You know what I mean? It's unfuckwithable, and it contains the secret Pandora's box medicine that has so many cures for human diseases, and that's so fascinating. And it's what's really cool is like the things that are bad for us at the right dose can actually heal us and teach our immune system of how to heal itself is the really cool part. And again, it's just, it's really, really awesome. I wonder if there's something to be said about the purging process, because I know this happens in ayahuasca where people basically puke their brains out, and it's called purging for a reason, because you're releasing this negative energy that may be coming, and it's not always vomiting, and sometimes it's crying. And I want to ask you about that process, the purging process, and about that darkness that may come up in those moments. Is there something to be said about, like, the feelings that come up need to be processed in a way, like they need to be felt, and maybe it just needs to like smack you in a way, like combo smacks you in a way that's so intense that you question, why did I even sign up for this to start off with? But you need to be smacked to that extent to be able to feel that intensity and that energy, to be able to release it. Is there something to be said about that? Like, it's almost like you have to feel it to release it. Is that what's happening?
Yeah, for sure. I mean, like, this even goes back to Chinese medicine. They said like unprocessed emotions, which, by the way, they also say there's no bad emotions. There's just unprocessed emotions, or stuck emotions will create disease in the body. But then
Wow.
these emotions also are normally tied to memories or certain ideas or thought forms. And yeah, the only way that we can heal from these things are to really sit with that and learn the lesson that is also with that pain or that feeling or that memory. So then we don't have to make that mistake again in the future. And then, our society is just inundated with distractions and simple pleasures that can, hide pain so easily. And people, it's so easy to pretend these days, but that's just so far from the truth, which is all that is, that, like, if you're not living truth, then it's a lie. And when we lie to ourselves or hide things from ourselves, then mainly the only one who suffers the most is ourselves. And yeah, combo really, it brings up every single thing that you've been hiding from yourself, all the
Oh,
pain and the illusions. It brings it like right up front and center for you to look at. A lot of the other medicines too, a lot of the other like jungle medicines, but it brings it right up for you to look at, and then you get to, for a lot of people, vomit it into a bucket. Everyone doesn't throw up. Some people pass out. Some people just, they black out for a little bit, which the tribes actually say is a deeper purge, because you get like
mm,
a full reboot on your system.
mm.
And then afterwards as well, like a lot of people will have, like huge emotional release. Like I've myself have cried for like a long time after combo purge. And then, you really get to kind of restabilize after that and assess a lot of different things, think about like your life decisions and what even led you to the first place to have all this toxicity build up in your system. Um,
Yeah. I think those emotions that you're talking about, like whether it's like sadness or like intense grief or anger or fear, and the ones that we don't want to include for some reason in our sense of being, like they just are really a part of us, and part of going through that process. And I've never done combo, but this is something that I've experienced maybe through meditation or through ayahuasca, is like, man, I feel so much better after I've accepted those parts of myself that I did not want to look at. Like, and not just better in a sense of like healthier, which is definitely true. I feel more complete. I feel more whole, in the sense of like I understand life better. Life has more meaning to me. The meaning is more, I see. I see the duality, and then I see all of it, and then it just collapses into this like non-duality of like oneness. Like, this is all one, those energies, so-called quote unquote negative energies. They're not negative energies. They are, if you want to include the fact that like we're speaking in a dualistic nature just for fun, like we're doing this as a way of communication because it's hard for us to communicate that. But once you come into contact with them and you accept them, you just feel so much stronger and, again, so much more complete. And I think that's a lot of what people are dealing with nowadays, is just these emotions that want to be a part of them and a part of their um of being and understanding of it's okay to feel that stuff, because a lot of people have shame for feeling those things, and shame is one of those emotions, but they feel like if they're not safe to express them, like maybe they had their parents, and their parents, when every time they got angry or they got sad, their parents would like reprimand them like, oh no, don't cry, or don't feel this, or don't that, and as a kid you internalize that, right? Because you're not choosing to feel angry. Like, you're not choosing to feel sad and cry. Like, that's just a natural part of your existence. That's part of who you are. And so they grow up with these like blockages, and then they hold those emotions in areas of their body, maybe like their liver, if it's like anger, or grief, if it's like the lungs. And those are just some of the ones that I know. But part of the process of healing, and I think for any chronic illness, and I want to know if you agree with this, is emotional in nature. Like, it's almost like the foundation of what we're doing with all of this medicine is emotional energy, and energy is the root of it all. And yeah, like, do you agree with that emotions are at the root of all of this?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, there's a lot of roots for a lot of things, but that is probably one of the most important aspects of healing. I mean, even just when you're feeling certain emotions, you're going to get a release of certain hormones, or like, different drugs in the body, which can all be good as long as they're in balance. But if you can think of like the most deeply healing state that your body can be in, which is like a deep sleep, you can only get to that point if you're relaxed and, in a deeply comfortable environment where your body can really just let go. And if your body's stuck in fight or flight, or, looping these thoughts or emotions around in your system to where you're having a bunch of adrenaline and cortisol pumping, your body's just won't be able to enter into the modes that it needs to just handle all of its functions. Like I know even, when you're in that fight or flight mode, all of your blood and energy gets sent to your extremities, like your legs and your arms, so you can run or fight. And then when it's doing that, your immune system is shut down, and even your digestion is shut down. So you can't even break down the food that's in your body. And, yeah, it's crucial to have, emotional balance. And that doesn't mean that there are certain emotions that are better than others. Every emotion is valid. They just need to be used for their best potential. Even anger, sadness, all these things. Yeah, I've had a lot of experiences as a kid where my parents would be like, "Oh, don't cry, don't cry." And that's, that they didn't know any better, but it's
Yeah.
important to cry.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's really important to cry. Important to be
Yeah.
angry. Important to be really mad, and
Yeah.
release that in a healthy way.
Yeah. 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 I mean, these emotions exist for a reason. And a good gauge, like, I have a good friend who always tells me, like, if you're going through the ebbs and flows, that's good, right? But if you have like an emotion that's just staying there for like a really long time, that's like a gauge of like, oh, maybe I should find a way to see what's going on, or how I can alter this. But yeah, all these emotions are valid. And like, there's something really nice about like a good cry. Like, I feel, it happens. Psilocybin mushrooms help me like process, crying every time. I usually start weeping every time I do like a heroic dose. But like, man, I feel so good afterwards. So relieved, so released, so much lighter. I feel like I'm prancing through the world like a fucking pony, you know? It's like I feel so good. Um and it's always a process for me, and so honestly, I'm just so thankful to be hearing this stuff, and to be sharing it with people, and all of that. But I want to shift gears a little bit to something that's also considered a venom that you do, that you're a facilitator, and that's bee venom therapy. And I've actually never really heard about this. Actually, I did hear about it from you. I saw it on one of your posts on Instagram. I think, if I'm not mistaken, there was like some research you were posting that like bee venom is actually curing AIDS.
Yeah, well, it can cure a lot of different infections. And that post was talking about how it can be used for HIV. And especially in countries where, they don't have a lot of access, especially in remote parts of countries like, in Africa, they don't have a lot of access to medical care, but there's a lot of bees everywhere. And yeah, bee venom has been used a lot in also ancient cultures, definitely in China and different places around the world to kill infections and to open up different energy channels in the body. Like bee venom therapy is done where you place bee stingers on specific acupuncture points or energetic spots of the body that have a big effect. Yeah, bee venom can cure Lyme. It's cured Lyme in a lot of people. Um, Epstein-Barr, even like certain parasites and a lot of different things. People have had a lot of relief. I've even heard STDs have been cured by bee venom. It's really good for Alzheimer's, which there's a lot of evidence saying that Alzheimer's has a lot to do with certain organisms that are active in the brain, also heavy metals. Um, yeah, bee venom is, it's a good modality for sure.
Yeah, another one of those venoms that if taken at the right dose can actually heal you as opposed to like poison you. That's what people think like venom equals bad, venom equals poison equals bad. And, and those are a lot of diverse issues. It's so cool how like these they work in a diverse variety of ways where it's like it's not just like Lyme, but it's like Lyme and HIV and Alzheimer's, and it's like tackling a lot of things at the same time. It's almost like we're tapping into like the wisdom of the bee or the wisdom of the frog, and it's like learn something that we just don't have the knowledge of, or even like ayahuasca, like plant medicine. Like these are like intelligent beings, and like when you consume them, you're getting a taste of that intelligence, right? And it's interpreted through your lens of perception and how your body receives it. And that's how plants communicate to us. That's how frogs communicate to us. That's how bees communicate to us is through molecules. Because, like, you're not going to walk up to a bee and be like, hi, I know how to cure you. Like, it just doesn't work that way. Like, it's not going to speak American English to you or any language for that matter. But in the way that it does, it can communicate to you if you listen and if you consume it in a way that's, I guess, ethical and responsible. Because I know there's a lot of talk about like how are we sourcing these things, especially with like kambo and like bufo and these toads and ayahuasca. Like we need to do it in a responsible way. Yes, they can help us, yes, they can cure us, but like we got to give the planet its credit and keep on regenerating it in the way that it really wants to, because it does want to help us and it can help us. We just have to respect it.
Yeah, there needs to be something I've loved that people talk about is the term like sacred reciprocity, where
Mm.
like whatever you take, you also need to give, and like really the earth right now, it really needs to receive more than it's being taken from. So we should always give twice and take once, at
Yeah.
least, maybe even give three times and take once.
Yeah.
But our culture is so driven to just extract and to consume and take and take and take and take. And this has been a practice in every ancient indigenous culture around the world. They would always give or make an offering or a ceremony
Right.
to give
Sacrifice.
back. Yeah, to give back to the earth. Even like sacrifice is one way, but even like with song or with dance or way
Mm.
just to honor the elements and the environment, or just planting things, just planting seeds. That's
Yeah.
giving back to the earth so that we can also you know receive again, because if we just take and take and take, then there'll be nothing left. And yeah, it's definitely important with the combo, the bufo, the ayahuasca, anything that we, peyote is something that is on the endangered species list, I've heard. And it would be very unfortunate for a lot of these things to go extinct. I've heard even Albert Einstein has said about the bees. He said if the honeybees go extinct, the human species will be soon after. And yeah, so it's very important that we learn to be in right relation with our environment, internal environment, external environment, social environment, with all of these things. And they have the medicine of a lot of these plants and experiences, just the experience of illness itself. It really is such a good teacher to show you, how to be in right relation. Like with, there's a understanding in Tibetan Buddhism that like your enemy is your greatest teacher. Like your greatest adversary is going to be the biggest teacher to you to return to love and to show you all the places inside of you where you are out of alignment, where you are lacking, or where you're, out of touch with your true nature, which is love and health and peace and just beingness.
Very well said, brother. And of course, you had to drop another Einstein quote in there. That freaking guy, man, just knowledge bombs. But yeah, absolutely. In my life, like if you told me like 5 years ago I'd be who I am today with this like spiritual journey that I'm on and just started to like meditate and like finally find peace in my life where I never had peace, like everything was just chaotic. My energy was so, left and right and up and down, and it was really hard for me to feel at peace and just enjoy life. But it is our true nature. And for those who haven't experienced it, like it is possible to feel that way, to feel that peace, despite everything that's going on in the world. And it's not to downplay all the evils and the downfalls and the pitfalls of everything that's going on in your life and to people that you care about and the world in general. But that's not to say that, like, in a sense, the world needs you to be your greatest medicine. Like, the best thing you can do for yourself is to heal yourself. And the best thing you can do for the world is to heal yourself. Because a healed person is someone who can present to the world with so much joy and happiness and wisdom. And those things are like inexorably connected with each other. The joy and the wisdom, like they almost go hand in hand. And, the world of spirituality, right? Like, again, if you told me I'd be a spiritual person, which I don't like that label, I don't like any label. If you ask me, like, am I a spiritual person? Some days I'll say yes, some days I'll say no, because the label kind of throws me off a little bit. Like, of course, this is spiritual. You know what I mean? Like, everything is spirit. That we're living, we are spirit. That's who we are. And I want to talk to you about that. I want to talk to you about spirit and that world of consciousness, mind bending, beyond dimensional reality that we are connected to and is us. And maybe I guess we can start with plant medicine. I know that you've had experiences with ayahuasca, psilocybin. Just to start off, like for those who may not be aware of these things, like what are we talking about here, and how is that connected to this thing we call spirit?
Well, I mean, yeah, plant medicines, basically just open doorways that exist within our own body. They're just activating, energy centers or, pathways where we can be in more right relation and connection with spirit. Because, also, yeah, the question is funny. Like, are you spiritual? And it's, yeah, like I am a spirit. Like,
It's silly.
yeah, that's such a good way to like put that. And this is a lot to do with disease as well, as we've just lost touch with who we are. We don't even know. Like people don't even know what like spirituality is. And it's also, I think too, because like religion has just done so much to like commodify the experience of life and to really like alter people's perception of what spirituality is. And you can be a spiritual person and not religious, and you can be religious and not spiritual, or you can be both. But really the experience of spirituality is that it is a direct experience with the universe or yourself, and anything can be spiritual, like we all have certain experiences in life that just like make us really take a step back and sink into this state of something deeper. Even just watching a sunset, just watching a sunset is like one of the most spiritual things ever. And most people don't necessarily think of that as being spiritual. But I think there's a lot to be said about that too. You know, like the spiritual community and all this. There's a lot of like labels and just big like hype around an identity that it's who we are. Like, you know, and you can't really buy that. You can't sell that. It's just who we are. And yeah, I think this has to go back into like the plants too, and how they're being just extracted, you know, like and becoming endangered. Like we're becoming endangered. Our own relationship with ourself is becoming endangered because we're just trying to extract certain things from that. And you know, it's an important time to, you know, really check in with ourselves. And the plants can do such a great job with that when they're used correctly, when they're not done for, you know, this big show or like big ego experience of just playing into this over extraction of life. And you know, I love like people talk about there's like shamans and then there's like showmans. And like a showman is someone who is trying to sell something basically,
Yeah.
or like show something. And the shaman is someone who's just like, it's just themselves. Like people in shamanic societies, like they know that, you know, it's not something you choose. And it's often not something that people want to necessarily choose because it's very hard. Like the shamans normally go through very intense, life-threatening situations that make them find the medicine within themselves so they can share that with the world. And then also I heard this, like I actually sat with some San Pedro recently, and this man from Peru came, and he was saying, you know, everyone these days, they want to be a shaman. They want to be the super spiritual person. And he's like, but people don't even realize they already are a shaman. Everyone is a shaman. We're all spirit. We are all the great spirit.
Yeah.
There's no separation. You don't, just because you're from this country or you wear this clothes or you say these words, it doesn't matter. It's all the same expression of energy, of consciousness. And yeah.
Yeah, we're all alchemizers of magic. Like we're all consciousness. So we all are tapped into this energetic field that we can bend. And we do that through word. We do that through poetry. We do that through art. We do that through music. We do that through plant medicine, through facilitation. There's many ways of shamanically infusing our own individuality into the world, and then we get rewarded for that. And it's not even about the reward, but the reward is almost an altruistic way of being. It's like if you realize that we're all connected, and then you can alchemize, I can alchemize you and you can alchemize me, then we open ourselves up to this portal. And then, you know, the magic seems to increase exponentially, infinitely. Like there's no limit to how shamanic you can be. And at the same time, I have so much respect for those shamans who are like in the jungle, just like you said, going through like vision quests and all sorts of different, I mean, things that they do. I can't even imagine. Just like I think like I hear a lot of shamans like basically isolate themselves and do like ayahuasca or plant medicine for like weeks or like months on end, and then come back and go like, yeah, I'm ready, or something along those that nature. And I can't even imagine what that must be like, you know, being isolated for that long to start off with, and then being on medicine as well. So it's pretty crazy.
Yeah, absolutely. But then, you know, also imagine being a shaman in New York City.
Yeah.
Like imagine if you're going through all
Damn.
these experiences of, you know, being in such connection with great spirit in such a chaotic environment. You know, like imagine that, you know, like you don't have to be in the Amazon to be a shaman or like a super spiritual in touch person. And, yeah, there's many ways to experience and to relate and to connect with and to just be in this big soup of creation that we call life. And one thing I want to say too is that, like,
Yeah.
you know, with everything going on and like just all the changes in our world and with just everything, like I think people have really lost touch with just like the joy of this game that we're living. You know, it is just a game, and we often take it way too seriously. And it is very serious in moments, you know, but it is still a game. Like people call it a simulation. Why would you be in a simulation? It's a game. A game is played for fun. Like we're here to, yeah, to enjoy and experience all the flavors and experiences of this reality as it continues to grow and evolve and collapse and dance and alchemize. And yeah, what a ride.
Wow. So thank you for sharing all of that, man. Honestly, like that's such wise information. And I feel like people are really going to take what you said here and on this podcast. And I really hope, it resonates with people. It really resonated with me. Um, and yeah, you shared such gems, and I'm so glad that you decided to come on. I guess we could bring this podcast to a close. I just wonder if you have any maybe final thoughts to people who are listening, or any message to leave the folks with.
Yeah, I just want to say thank you to anyone who's listening. And, you know, there's always avenues. There's always an answer. There's always a way. If there's a will, there's a way. Um, yeah. Even when, like, you know, in our darkest moments, like these oftentimes just happen right before a huge breakthrough. And, yeah, there's many ways to find support. I'd be happy to support anyone if they're interested in reaching out. And, yeah, I'm just grateful that I'm still here and I've learned so much and can give back at this point.
Brother, we are so grateful for you as well, honestly, truly. And me personally, man, I'm so glad to have known you and met you. And every time we speak, I learn so much from you. Yeah, dude, honestly, so thankful for coming on. Is how can people reach you if people want to find you on social media, or what's a good way to find you?
Yeah, I'm on Instagram at Chi Universe. So it's QI and then underscore universe. That's a good way to find me. And I have a website that's also posted on there. But yeah, DM me, follow me. You know, I'm around.
All right. Awesome, brother. I hope we can do this again sometime soon and go even deeper.
Yeah, I would love to do that as well. Thank you so much for the opportunity. And yeah, I hope you have a beautiful day.
All right. See you guys later for the next one.
Peace.